we created this. Ultimately, the product at the time was about connecting website visitors directly with the sales team, as opposed to having to like fill out a 15-step lead form on somebody's website, wait 5 days to hear back, then deal with endless follow-up. And it was this miserable process. And so we came out and we said, look, we're not going to do gated content anymore. We're not going to do we're not going to use lead forms anymore. And we created this content that was not about our product at Drift, but it was about this movement of like, here's the future of sales and marketing. Here's how this is going to work. And wink, wink, nod, nod. That's because we're building a product that's a chatbot that's going to do that for you. Mm-hmm. But we were able to create this movement of like fellow marketers who were like, yes, I believe in your way of doing things. Like, take me with you. And so we created these super fans through content by having a unique take on the state of marketing, having a clear, like we were chatting before this about Donald Miller's story brand. And it's like, there's a similar concept there where like we were the, Yoda to the Luke Skywalker, where we're trying to say like, look, there's a new way to do marketing. Like, are you frustrated with the way that you're doing marketing at your company? Do you feel like it's not working, or is it pissing off your customers? Well, like, we understand. We've been there too. So come read this article. We'll show you the new way of doing things. And like, it becomes this inch by inch game of like, first we have people listen to our podcast, then they're listening, then they're on our email list, right? Then they're getting our content, then they're showing up at our events. And we really took this approach to success through storytelling and brand building, as opposed to like, oh, well, our thing works, 7% better than the competitor out there, and focusing on features and benefits.
And it seems like you were much more focused on, using the word you said, you're much more focused on like the movement behind what you were doing, and not even necessarily, obviously, like you said, wink, wink, nod, nod, our product is coming and it's going to support everything that we're saying. But it's unique in the aspect of, we're not trying to sell you up front. We're trying to get you involved with our way of thinking, because it's unique to the market and something different and something that you've never heard before. And I think that's even just like in, straight product marketing, not even just like, content marketing. The whole point is to, show an audience what's unique about your product. And it's interesting when you pivot and here's what's unique about our business as a whole and our strategy. And we're also letting you kind of peek behind the curtain, so to speak, of the way we think, because it's different than the way you're thinking. And let me like show you the path forward.
And totally. And one of the ways that we did that was that David, the CEO, and I started a podcast called Seeking Wisdom. Mm-hmm. And the podcast was initially started because when we were still months away from launch, we were trying to create content for David to build up the brand of the company through the CEO and the founders, which is a strategy that I really believe in. But like what ended up happening was, so here's the story. So I wanted to create all this content, but I didn't really know anything, right? Like most marketers, which is okay. It's not a knock. It's like, he's the CEO, he's the expert. I don't know enough about this world yet. I want to ghostwrite for him, but I can't possibly do it. And so I found this trick, which is like, oh, well, through podcasting, I have all the podcast gear. And so I brought in my like Zoom H4n recorder and some mics. And I said like, look, hey, I'm going to book 30 minutes on your calendar. I'm going to interview you on these. You had this tweet that really pissed people off. Can I interview you about that tweet so then I can turn it into an article for you? Because like this would be a great article and I know it will blow up, but you don't have time to write it because you're the CEO. So we sit down. I start interviewing. Oh no, he initially did it by himself. I was like, hey, go in a room and just talk about this topic. And it was terrible because it's hard to just like,
talk to yourself.
Unless you're like one of us who's done like 1,000 podcast episodes, like it's hard to talk to yourself. Right. And so he's like, this is not going to work. This is super uncomfortable. So he's like, why don't you come in and just interview me? And so I started interviewing him, but it morphs into like, next question, it actually becomes a conversation. And so we're like, there's something here. Like we kind of have this, and I initially didn't want to be involved in it because it's like, I wanted it to be about him and the CEO and like, who am I? Like I wouldn't want some like random, intern, not that I was an intern, but like associated with this like well-known CEO's brand. But it worked. It really worked really well. Where like, we kind of had these two different perspectives as like one person who's kind of a proven CEO, and then other person on the other spectrum of their career, me trying to like work my way up. And we talked about, and so we talked about like books we were reading, lessons we were learning, like he was giving me wisdom, but then we were also talking about like how we were building the company and what was happening inside the company as we were building. And none of those things had anything to do with marketing, but like the combination of that point of view that we talked about before with like, creating this mission, but then also sharing kind of our story as we're doing it and sharing who we are, and then almost becoming like the faces of the brand. It was such a great approach to build a B2B brand that was like, look, I just think that the way that B2B, almost any company, but unless it's super transactional B2C, when you're selling to a company, things that matter more are like trust, authority, who else you work with, who you partner with. And so like we were able to show people all that through our content. And so at a time when maybe the product and the market were unproven, we were able to earn trust and credibility through our content. And that was strictly through the podcast that we were able to do that.